Imagine this. A woman, once surrounded by diamonds and gold, now sits in a cold, filthy prison cell. Her hair has turned white. Her hands tremble as she holds a small piece of bread. Outside, a mob chants for her head. Not her name, her head. That woman was Marie Antoinette. We remember her for one quote, "Let them eat cake." But here's the truth, she never said that. In fact, what was done to her before the guillotine was far more brutal than the execution itself. Today, we're peeling back the curtain on what really happened to the most hated queen in history. And trust me, you've never heard it told like this. And if you think this is going to be just another history lecture, nope. Buckle up, because this story has betrayal, heartbreak, humiliation, and a shocking twist of grace you won't believe. France in the late 1700s was falling apart. The poor were starving, the rich were partying, and the people wanted blood, royal blood. Marie Antoinette, the Austrian princess who became Queen of France, had become a symbol of everything wrong with the country. But here's the thing. She wasn't even the one making the political decisions. She was basically a young girl trapped in a snake pit of power, gossip, and hatred. When angry mobs stormed the royal palace in 1789, the royal family tried to flee. They dressed in disguises, Marie wearing plain clothes instead of her glittering gowns, and slipped into the night. For a moment, they almost made it. But at a small town called Varennes, a postmaster recognized her face from a coin. One coin. They were dragged back to Paris like criminals. The same people who once cheered her wedding now screamed for her death. From that day on, she wasn't Your Majesty. She became Widow Capet, the wife of a dead king and the target of a revolution. And if you think being queen was hard, just wait for what came next. By the way, can you imagine going from gold-rimmed champagne glasses to drinking water out of a tin cup? Yeah, welcome to Marie's new reality. The temple prison wasn't just a place for confinement. It was a machine built to break a person's spirit. Her room was damp, cold, and crawling with rats. The guards never looked away, not even when she tried to sleep. They mocked her every movement. They called her the widow, spat near her food, and laughed as she wept for her children. One night, she was separated from her 8-year-old son. He was locked away in another room, and she never saw him again. Her hair turned completely white within weeks. Her health crumbled. She used to wear silk. Now she wrapped herself in rough wool to stay warm. And yet, she never begged. She never screamed. Even the guards began whispering that the Austrian woman was stronger than any man they jailed. But the cruelty didn't stop there, because next came the trial. And this, my friend, was not justice. It was revenge disguised as law. October 1793, the courtroom was packed, not with fair judges, but with people who already wanted her dead. Marie stood there, pale and thin, in a plain white gown. The accusations were wild. They blamed her for bankrupting France, for plotting with enemies, and the most disgusting one, that she had corrupted her own son. Even the crowd went silent at that. Marie's face turned white. Then, slowly, she lifted her head and said, "If I have not answered, it is because nature refuses to reply to such a charge made to a mother." That one line shook the room. Some people even cried, but it didn't matter. The verdict had been decided before the trial began. Guilty. Sentenced to death. Let's pause. Can you imagine being blamed for destroying an entire country when all you really wanted was to protect your kids? Talk about being the wrong person in the wrong story. After the verdict, they stripped her of everything. No jewelry, no comfort, no name, only prisoner number 280. Her last nights were silent. She spent them writing letters to her sister-in-law, forgiving everyone who had hurt her. "I die innocent," she wrote. "I forgive my enemies." They made her sleep on a wooden board instead of a bed. When she asked for a priest, they gave her one who worked for the revolution, hoping he'd convince her to confess to fake crimes. She refused. On the morning of her execution, she ate nothing but a small piece of bread. She prayed quietly. When the guards came, she didn't cry. She just stood up and said, "Let us go." But they weren't done humiliating her yet, because unlike her husband, who rode to his death in a closed carriage, Marie was paraded through the streets in an open cart for the crowd to mock. Picture this, a grey October morning. Marie Antoinette, hands tied, hair cut short, sitting in a wooden cart as thousands shouted insults. They threw mud, stones, even spit, but she stayed silent. No tears, no fear, only calm. When the cart reached the execution square, she stepped down carefully and accidentally stepped on her executioner's foot. She looked at him and said, "Pardon me, sir, I did not mean to do it." Even in her final moment, she showed more grace than anyone there. No one could believe it. Some people for the first time felt ashamed. Seconds later, the blade fell, and the cheers of the crowd drowned out everything. The queen was gone. All right, I know what you're thinking. That's it? That's how it ends? Well, not exactly, because what happened after her death might change the way you see her forever. For years, history painted her as a villain, selfish, arrogant, cold. But when historians looked deeper, they found something shocking. Most of the stories about her were lies. The "let them eat cake" quote, written by a political journalist years after she died. The wild spending sprees? Exaggerated propaganda. Even her so-called arrogance came from being isolated and terrified in a world she didn't understand. She wasn't a monster. She was a scapegoat, a human shield for a broken system. And yet, in her final days, she showed something her enemies never expected: humanity. Her grace in death made even some revolutionaries question what they'd become. She was supposed to be erased from history, but instead she became immortal. And maybe that's the real twist. She lost her crown, but she gained something no guillotine could take away: dignity. Marie Antoinette's story isn't just about a queen who lost everything. It's about how power, pride, and perception can twist reality. She entered France as a teenager, full of dreams and grace, and left the world branded as a villain. But when you strip away the lies, you see something else. A woman caught between duty and chaos, between a dying monarchy and a rising revolution. They destroyed her image. They erased her name. But what they couldn't erase was her courage. In those final moments, when she stood on the wooden platform, facing thousands who wanted her dead, she didn't scream. She didn't beg. She simply bowed her head and whispered, "Pardon me, sir." That one act, small, gentle, human, became louder than any speech she ever gave. And maybe that's why her story still haunts us. Because deep down, we see a reflection of our own world in hers. How fast people can turn against someone, how rumors can destroy truth, and how dignity can survive even when everything else is taken away. Marie Antoinette didn't die as a monster. She died as a woman who refused to lose her humanity, no matter how cruel the world became. Pause. And if this story taught you something about loss, resilience, or perspective, I want you to see another kind of power. A quiet power that builds empires not through crowns or revolutions, but through time and patience. It's called the power of compounding. Because sometimes, the smallest choices, the ones you make today, can change your life forever. Click the video on your screen right now, and I'll show you how people built their own kingdoms, one small decision at a time.